Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Strange Girl 831. I hope your holidays were great. Today, we're not going to talk about the holidays because I am over Christmas. I am so done with it. Not my favorite holiday. Today, we're going to talk about what to do when your art sucks, or rather, when you feel like your art sucks, because usually that's the case. And it's a very frustrating thing to be stuck in this mindset where even though everyone around you says what you're doing is awesome and it looks great, you feel like it's terrible. Now, first of all, that is completely normal. One of my favorite sayings in the world is, you are going to be your worst critic always. And especially as an artist or any type of creative, it's true. You can see all the tiny, tiny little mistakes that you made that no one else is even going to notice, but because you know they're there, they stand out to you. But unfortunately, there's no way to really stop that. It's just a form of negative thinking. I guess you could stop it. But today, I put together a list of different things you can try to kind of break out of that, get yourself back on track. So, as you can see here in my video, we have a handsome guest on my channel. Before I get into my list, I'm going to introduce him because there's going to be quite a few questions. So this is my bearded dragon, Cujo. I have had him for years and years and years. He's my buddy. And he loves to sit on my desk while I draw, or in this case, paint. I would like to mention that he was never in any danger being on my desk. For anyone who wants to come for me, he doesn't bother my paints, he doesn't bother my art supplies. Partway through this video, don't really even see him anymore. You can see his butt because he ends up turning around and leaving his butt in my camera because he's thoughtful like that. So he's completely safe. Don't try and come at me. But that's Cujo. If you have any questions about him, please feel free to leave them down below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. But now that that's out of the way, let's get back to it. As you can tell from this video, I'm drawing Jack Skellington. Honestly, one of my favorite movies is Nightmare Before Christmas. Honestly, pretty much anything Tim Burton's done, I'm obsessed with. And I thought this was a very fitting piece to go with the topic that I'm talking about today. Because for a very, very long time, I drew fan art, and I mainly just drew fan art. I drew very few original concept pieces, mainly because for a really long time I didn't take my art too seriously. It was just a hobby. With me being a parent and me working, it wasn't something I put a lot of time and effort into doing or expanding my skills on. And yeah, that's about it. I kind of fell into the fan art category, and that's where I stayed for a very long time. So that's my safe place. If you've been following me on Instagram or here, because, well, I've only done 1 or 2 videos, but if you've been following my Instagram, which is where I post regularly, you will see that I've been doing things that are not fan art. And that's been a journey for me, actually. And I still have quite a ways to go to better my skills for that. But recently, I've kind of hit a block where I wasn't doing as much art as I'd want to, and I wasn't filming as much as I wanted to because I wasn't doing as much art as I wanted to. And I was getting really frustrated with myself, and then every time I did try and draw something, it didn't turn out, and I didn't like it. So that's how we're coming to this topic. So I'm going to give you a couple of my tips. And my biggest tip, the reason I brought up the fan art in the first place, is sometimes you need to reset yourself a little bit. Bring yourself a bit back to where you're more comfortable so that you're less critical on yourself, because when you're doing things that you know you're good at, you're less likely to get frustrated. So in my case, it was going back to doing the fan art. And in my case, I did one of my favorite characters, and I added in a lot of my favorite colors. As you guys may know, Jack Skellington isn't actually green, but green is one of my favorite colors. So I made this piece specifically for myself, knowing that I liked the concept, if that makes sense. So I dialed it back to something super simple with a lot of elements in it that I liked, to kind of just let myself reset. And I realized not everyone starts off with doing fan art. That's okay. Even if you need to dial yourself back to going back and revisiting tutorials or how-tos, or looking up sketching tips online, or not sponsored, but say going on Skillshare. Please sponsor me, that'd be great. Anyway, there's tons of tutorials, tons of classes that you can access completely free. So if that's your form of going back, then do it. There's no harm in doing that, because when you go back to a comfortable place, it's sometimes resets your brain to make it easier to move forward and, I guess, overcome the difficulties you were having in the first place. Now, my second tip is drawing from reference. Apparently this is controversial. I don't understand, but I'm going to suggest it anyway, so sue me. When I say drawing from reference, I do not mean tracing or completely copying something someone else has done. But drawing from reference, whether it's, say, cartoons, photos, real life, anything that you can physically see and then try replicating onto paper. In this piece that I'm doing here, I used a reference. I don't see it as cheating. I don't understand why it's controversial, but it helps you better pay attention to proportion and how things are laid out and how things look. Because, for example, his hands here, which you can see me painting now, there is very, very little chance I would have been able to do that off the top of my head. All the bony skeleton hand things. Yeah, I couldn't have done that by hand. And also, when you're drawing from reference and you're using it to practice, that's just for you. And even if you're using a reference for a whole piece, as long as you're not directly copying it completely over, I don't see how it's stealing or bad or whatever. But again, that's my opinion. Feel free to leave your opinion down below. Is drawing from reference cheating? Do I need to go to art jail? I don't know. So, on to tip number 3, because I can count. Try drawing something else, or try a new medium, or try doing something different. Yeah, I'm not sure how to explain this. Again, it can go back to going back to subject matter, say you're comfortable with, or going to a completely opposite subject matter that you don't draw often, just to kind of reset your brain. So for example, say you draw a lot of people, switch to drawing animals, or say you do a lot of sketching in pencil. One thing I like to do sometimes is I'll skip the pencil completely and I'll go straight in with a ballpoint pen, because I love my ballpoint pens. And I think in my brain it makes me feel like it's not as important because, oh, it's not a big fancy sketch because I'm not sketching in pencil where I can erase it. I'm just doodling with a pen. Heck, try painting without lines, or going straight in with markers, or whatever you feel like doing, because honestly, art is about playing around and doing things and trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. And you're not going to know what does and doesn't work if you haven't tried it. So if you're getting sick and tired and frustrated with what you're currently doing, why not try something else? Because you may end up absolutely loving it. I know in my case, I worked in ballpoint pen for years and years and years, and I absolutely loved it, and I still do. But recently, about 2 months ago, I guess, I was given a set of Viviva watercolors, which are blocking my shot that I just noticed in my video. I'll be mindful of that the next time I'm filming. Anyway, and I didn't try them necessarily because I was down on my art at the time, but it came at a very good time for me because I hadn't been drawing really, and I hadn't been doing a lot of creative stuff. And honestly, I had hated painting. Before 2 months ago, I hadn't painted since my grade 10 art class, and that was because I had to, and even then I hated it. But this little set gave me the freedom to just kind of mess around and see what I thought, and I didn't feel stressed out about it because, hey, I was just messing around. So that's something to keep in mind too. Try something different, or try everything different. Anything to kind of reset your brain, take it off the current issue and your current frustration. Do what works for you. So, for my next tip, I want to touch on the color wheel and color schemes. As I mentioned before, Jack Skellington isn't green, for anyone who actually knows, but I decided to make him green because that was one more element in this piece that would make me like it more. Now, when we're talking about the color wheel, some things that can make your art seem more put together and look better and have different feel to it is by being mindful of the colors you're using when you're painting or drawing or coloring. And I like to use 2 different tips, one or the other. So for the first one, using light colors on the color wheel. So, for example, warm colors like red, yellow, orange, sticking to mainly those as your dominant colors in your piece, or purple, blue, green, sticking to mainly those. This gives your piece an overall feel to it. It makes it feel cohesive and put together and planned. Now, the other thing I like to do also involves the color wheel, obviously. When you're working in pieces that have larger blocks of color, and you can go on my Instagram and see what I'm talking about with my last couple paintings, where in those paintings it was mainly just a skin tone, the hair color, and then a background color if I had it. What I like to do is use contrasting colors, and those are colors, they're any of the colors on the color wheel, and if you don't know it off by heart, you can look it up on Google. Those are colors on the color wheel that are directly opposite from each other. So for example, orange and purple, those two are contrasting colors, and putting them side by side or in close proximity to each other can really add a nice poppiness to it, very nice bright color. And if it's not something you do frequently, it's something different. It, again, I've said it a million times at this point, resets your brain, gives you something different to work with. Now, this next tip will probably, you probably heard it on other videos or blogs or anything that talk about this subject matter, but getting inspired. And honestly, I have 3 key places I go to do this. The most common 2 that I use completely regularly are Pinterest and Instagram. And I like Pinterest the most just because you can make your own little folders, playlists. I don't know what they're called on Pinterest. But you can actually save pins to a folder. And I have a million different folders for a million different things. But one of the folders I do have is just inspiration. And it's just a collection of photos that I find very appealing, that I want my art to kind of have that same feel and that aesthetic to it, if that makes sense. Not style, just aesthetic, that feel. And with Pinterest, because you can put them in these folders, I like it because then you can see them all together and you can scroll through. And in my case, I like to go through and say, oh, these 4 all have similar eye structure, or these are really cool because, and then I can consciously pay attention to those details and things that stand out to me, and then I can practice them, even if it is just on the back pages of my sketchbook, because my sketchbook's a mess. Maybe I'll do a sketchbook tour one day, but it'll be a disaster. But just, it gives me the chance to practice. Now, the other one I like to use is Instagram. Instagram I tend to use regularly also. I find it very similar to Facebook. I like it because there's less drama on Instagram. And it's mainly visual based. But I honestly love pulling inspiration from Instagram. And again, when I say inspiration, just pieces of artwork or photography or anything really that catches my eye and makes me go, ooh, I like that. That's cool. So paying attention and actively seeking out those inspirations and taking note of what about them inspires you. Sorry, my brain stopped. But that's a great way to kind of get your creative juices flowing again, if that makes sense. Now, the other one, not a lot of people like, and I know I'm really leery about this too. One of my last tips is just taking a break. And this can be in tons of different forms. Usually when I think about taking a break, I mainly just mean from the piece that is frustrating me. For example, recently I was trying to do a piece it was going to be a gift, and it just wasn't turning out the way I wanted it to, and I was really frustrated because, and I was telling my husband this, the piece I was doing was traditional fan art. It was actually a Sailor Moon piece for my best friend. And I was getting very frustrated. And I said to him, geez, I usually go and do fan art when I get frustrated, but this is fan art and I'm frustrated. What do I do now? So I tried fixing it and refixing it and reworking it, and I tried to stick with it because I used to have a really bad habit of giving up on my art too early. But then I ended up just putting it aside and just taking a break, leaving it alone, and moving on to something else. In this case, the something else was actually this Jack Skellington piece and a few other little sketchy stuff, drawings that I was doing. This past weekend, I actually have not revisited it yet, partially because I'm considering just either completely scrapping it or redoing it. And in this case, again, another controversial subject, if I do redo it, I'll probably trace it, because I did hand draw the image. The image was hand drawn by me with reference, and there are parts of the composition I do like. I like how a lot of it is laid out. The main thing that was frustrating me was the face, and when I tried to paint it, that's when I started getting frustrated. So if I do try and redo it, I'll probably just trace it. Come at me, it's my own art, I'm stealing from myself, whatever. I realize it's controversial and no one likes it. It is what it is. Again, down below, let me know what you guys think of tracing. Is it bad? Is it okay? Personally, if you're tracing your own art, I don't see a big deal about it. You're not hurting anyone. Anyway, I digress. And I have a cold. I apologize. But again, taking a break. And sometimes taking a longer break, a couple days, to just do other things and reset can really help too. If you've been working super hard on your artwork and nothing's turning out and you just need that breather, then go ahead and take it, but make sure you come back and keep trying. Some of the things I like to do if I take a break is I'll take a break, but then I'll go through my desk and I will get rid of all my junk and reorganize it, make it nice and clean, or not fully clean, but I don't have time to make it all clean. Anyway, but just reorganizing the space or going back through my art supplies, so I'm still connected to my art in a way, but I'm doing something productive. Also, one thing I really like is when I do take that break and go through my art supplies, sometimes I find art supplies that I had tucked away that I totally forgot about, and then I end up fiddling with that for like 3 hours. Last time I did that, actually, I found my metallic Sharpies, and my god, I had a fun time with those. So if you need to reorganize your space, try out new art supplies, get inspired, or any of the other crap I said in this video, some of it I've probably forgotten, just do it. Because in the end, art is not fulfilling if you're constantly stressed about it and you're constantly freaking out about it. And sometimes you just need to reset. So try some new tutorials, try some new supplies, and don't stress, because honestly, yes, tons of people say it, but your art probably isn't as bad as you think it is. That's like 99.9999% of the time the case. Again, we see it, and we see all the little flaws, and they look so much bigger because we know they're there. Everyone else doesn't see them. For example, you guys probably can't even see the flaws that stand out like a sore thumb in this art piece. Feel free to take some guesses down below. But that's all for today. I really hope you got something out of this rambling, ranting, crazy video, because I am still terrible at voiceovers, and now I can't even talk English. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoy.